I am Cymone Wilder, as you mentioned. Simon and Moose on the socials. That's kind of my doing business as. It doesn't really mean much of anything, but it has become synonymous and it's too late to change it, so I'm sorry. Let's see. Okay, so I'll briefly introduce myself. And I won't talk too long about myself because we're just going to have a conversation and make it very comfortable or uncomfortable. We'll see. But that's me. Obviously, super excited to be here. I'm really cute. I was really cute. I grew up, but I grew up in Central Illinois. Very small town style living. Lived kind of in a bubble for a really long time, and then I went to school in Illinois and moved here as soon as I graduated, and that's kind of when my bubble began to burst. So that's me. These are some people that I've gotten to work with in the past couple of years, and we'll kind of talk about this later, but this was the first year I've even been able to put a grid together like this because I haven't had work like this in the past until very recently. So it's been a very exciting time. It's been very busy. I'm tired, but we're here. We did it. This is my work. This is what it looks like. It's super good. This was actually probably like in college when I first discovered what lettering even was, that could be a thing. So there you go. My work, I like to describe as deep fried. I think I really love to play with textures and how you can make your work feel real and tangible, because that's my goal, is to make it feel engaging and like something that you can touch, you can feel, you can smell it, you can stand in front of it. That's like my sweet spot. And so I discovered a way to deep fry my lettering. And so that's kind of what I do. I take some clean stuff like this and make it look like that. And that's how I do it. It's so easy. Anybody can do it. You just really just take a sheet of paper and put it in front of your screen and voila, that's it. It's so easy. This is what some of my work looks like. I promise it looks a little bit better on a real screen or in person. But this is what I've been able to, mess around and play with this year. I do like big client work, as you saw, but this is like the cool, fun stuff that I enjoy doing. And then this is a little bit more, you really can't see some of it, and I promise it's okay looking stuff in real life. I promise. But this is kind of what we're going to get into today. The theme is invisible. And this is the really great Ralph Ellison quote from his book, The Invisible Man. I am invisible simply because people refuse to see me. And I feel like that is something that I've always kind of resonated with, but in the last couple of years has been something that has just been made abundantly clear with how my work has changed and how I'm being received and perceived in this world. And so we'll kind of get into it. And I invited my friend Manny here because he's incredible. He's great at talking, and I'm not great at talking. He's going to make me sound better. So that's why he's here. We're going to have a conversation. We want it to feel like you guys are invited in that conversation. So if you have questions or thoughts, speak up. If you want to raise your hand, you can, but you can just also shout out if you want to. This might get uncomfortable at times. You might roll your eyes if this is something you don't like to talk about. Totally fine. I guess it's not for everybody. But we're just gonna have a conversation. And I want you to know that I haven't scripted anything. And this is a conversation I've had in pieces with people, but not really just sat down and had this conversation. And so I might be figuring stuff out in front of you. So apologies if I'm stumbling. But that's why Manny's here. He's gonna keep me on track. No pressure. No pressure. It's totally fine. It's totally fine. I'm not gonna say anything. Manny's gonna do the whole thing all by himself.
That's not the truth. That's not the truth.
But yeah, we'll just kind of, we've got a couple questions that we've got in our minds. But if you guys have questions along the way, shout them out. We'll have that conversation.
So I think the first question that I have is, you said your visibility changed in the last couple of years. How did that happen? Why did that happen? When did that happen?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been freelancing since I've been in school. So I've been doing it, not, I don't have decades of experience, but 6 or 7 years, maybe even 8 years. But last year, I don't know if you know, but a man named George Floyd was killed by police. And I will say, literally the day after he was killed, my inbox blew up. Like that, the day those black squares happened, that's when my inbox blew up. And I have never had work like that before this point. And it is a very interesting, but very uncomfortable feeling seeing that. Obviously, super, super exciting to have, you know, all these people, all these really great people knocking on my door. It's like people I've always wanted to work with, but for it to happen after the murder of somebody in a really terrible, visible way is a very uncomfortable thing to try to work through and face. And so, yeah, that's what happened last year.
So do you feel like you really actually were seen as a result of that? Or do you feel like you are kind of a byproduct of what happened in 2020?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I think obviously I became, you know, June 2nd, the day everybody posted black squares, people started sharing all these black artists that they followed for, you know, for the first time. And so I was becoming more visible for the first time to a lot of people. And I've been here, I've been in this space. This is like, my work didn't immediately get better the day George Floyd died. I've been, you know, good enough. But because I got so much work at that point, I think my skill became exponentially better because I was getting more work, and I was, so it was a little bit of both. I was being seen, I was also being put through the ringer. My skill was being put through the ringer, and I was growing faster. And I think that's what is so weird, is that it's like a weird vicious cycle. Like, had I been visible, maybe I could be so much better now because I would be getting the opportunity to grow. And so it's a weird place to be. And it's weird to think about. And it's weird to just be like, are these projects I should be taking because I'm being hired as I'm essentially the diversity hire in this case. And for such a, tragic event.
Yeah. So I guess my question to the audience at this point is, have any of you felt invisible in the work that you do? I consider myself, and I think she has coined this term for me, kind of design adjacent. So I don't exactly work in the design field full time, but I'm very involved in the design field. I consider myself a creative as well. But in whatever line of work you do any of you, have you felt invisible before or not seen in the work that you do? That could be because of your skin color, because of your gender, because of your beliefs, because of anything. And how did that make you feel?
Anybody have
any adjectives? Do you want to shout out anything?
Less.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What'd you say? Yes. So then with that, I guess for you all to think about, and maybe for Cymone to answer, how does that affect your work? So you said that in your previous statement, you said that my work has gotten better since I've been exposed and been able to work with these other brands and whatnot, but going from feeling invisible, how does that affect the way you work to moving to being visible? Talk about that transition and how you feel in that.
I mean, I feel like it's a big old like roller coaster of emotions, because it's like, oh yes, finally I get to work with, Target or Netflix. Like, of course I've always wanted to work with these people, but then it's this exhausting, series of thoughts like, am I being hired because this is the Black History Month project and I have to be, they feel like they have to hire Black people, or are they trying to fill a quota for, they sat down with their diversity team and they're like, okay, we're going to work with 10 Black people this year. And I'm one of those, Black people.
So
it's just like,
so even in that, do you feel like sometimes you have to put on a certain mode of work or a certain face in order to be seen as the Black person? You know what I mean? Because sometimes I feel like as a Black person, when they ask you to do certain things, you're many times asked to be the representative for everyone around you.
Yeah.
So is that something that you felt like this has to be super Black? This has to be, any certain adjective or way that you feel? Is that something that you struggle with?
I don't know that I struggle with that, but I will say, like I try to be as honest with what my work is doing, is at least on, you know, what I'm showing in my portfolio and on Instagram and all that stuff. I have not always been the person who, you know, is doing Ralph Ellison quotes and, you know, saying Black Lives Matter. But when I did, I think that's when I started getting that work. And my goal is to always just say what I need to say. And I think that when I started to say those things, that's when I started to be the person who is, you know, filling those types of jobs. I will say though, I don't know if this is what I'm always going to want to say. I don't need to always be the protest person who's like Black Lives Matter. Obviously, Black lives will always matter, but I got some other things to say. Like I want to say some corny, you know, stupid shit sometimes. You know, I think I had one that was like too stressed to be blessed. Like I want to, you know, say corny, dumb things like that. But because I came up or I became visible in this moment, I think my fear is that I will always be that type of person in clients' eyes. So it's definitely an interesting balance, and it's not something I've figured out yet. So we'll see.
So how do you break out of the perception that you feel people have of you? And that could be because of these instances or anything else. You know, I feel like this is what I feel my superiors think about me. So how do I break out of that? How do I change, you know, my brand, you know, amongst the community and whatnot?
I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I think I haven't quite figured out how to kind of shift that, other than to be honest with what I'm actually saying in the moment. And that is hard. Like I try to be honest with everything, but there's also like when I'm creating work, even if it's not for my portfolio or for Instagram or whatever, it's very difficult to get out of that mindset. Like, obviously I need to please people with this. There's a certain audience and I know that my audience has been identifying with, you know, saying, you know, protect Black women and Black Lives Matter. I know that that's going to get the likes. And so even when I'm sitting down to do something that is not for that purpose, it's hard to get out of that mindset. So I don't know the answer to that, other than I'm going to continue to remind myself that I just need to say what I actually have to say and not try to only do it to please people, which, you know, if you figured that out, please let me know how to do it, because I don't know how to do it yet.
Yeah, your statements brought up two things. One, you just kind of touched on just there. You know, what I hear you saying is honesty is the thing that authenticity and honesty of what you've clung to in terms of interpreting and getting your work out into the world. You know, do you have any other words or bits of advice for people? So how do you operate if I don't know how to progress myself from point A to point B in terms of how I want to be perceived, that I don't know how to break out of that, you know, box that people put me in? How can people work within that and still feel that they have something positive and good and authentic to offer? Sorry.
No, that's fine. It's fine. I don't know. I don't know. I think, you know, I just do what feels right. Like what is the instinct? Do the instinct thing and don't, you know, whatever that first instinct is, do that. And then, you know, of course, there's going to be a flurry of things that follow that change it.
And it's hard, I think, again, as a creative adjacent, designer adjacent, it's hard, especially even in social media these days. You know, you talked about Instagram a little bit, you know, you triggered in my mind, you said, when I design for work and I design for Instagram, you know, so it's hard in social media times to really be authentic and to not chase, you know, what I think is going to be popular. And I think just working that out in your mind and even using that authenticity and that honesty to fuel even what I'm putting there. You know, I think that could be one step that people just hold fast to that. You know, because there's so much going out there that's just, I see so many, I live kind of in like the fashion space on social media, you know, and so when I'm looking at other people that are putting out things, I'm like, man, you're not actually going to wear that in real life. That's not something you wear. Like, I'm never going to see you in the mall in that. I'm never going to see you out to eat in that. You're not going to wear that in real life. So put things out that are real.
Yeah.
And I think in my mind, that'll help you progress from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you agree? Or
yeah, I definitely agree. And I would almost say you can also put out things that you want to be true for yourself.
Okay. Yeah.
I know that, like, I grew up in predominantly white spaces my whole life. I grew up obviously I grew up in a town of white folks and went to school with white folks. Like, that's what I know. And I think that has led to me having kind of a later understanding of my Black identity. And so some of these things that I'm posting on social media at this point in my life are me trying to figure that stuff out for myself, and me reminding myself that being Black is okay, and really trying to lean into that. So I think there's that side to it. Don't lie and try to force an inauthentic version of yourself, but I think that there's a level of trying to make true some things for yourself.
I have a similar background. I went to performing arts and creative schools, and majority white spaces, and I love that being Black is okay, and layer that over yourself, being whatever I am. I was gonna say choose to be, but whatever I am is okay. Just layering that over your own self and being okay with that, going forth with that. And I also love your statement about putting things out there that you want to be perceived as. That is so crucial, because I think a lot of times creatives get caught up in not wanting to be a poser, or not wanting to just be fake in general, and sometimes putting yourself out there in the ways that you want to be perceived can be looked at as fake.
Yeah. Do you have something?
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
The first is, how has your workflow or your process shifted since this transition in your career? And the second is, do you ever fear that you might shift back again to not being visible? And if you do fear that, how do you think you would approach it?
Yeah, so let me do the second question first, because that might be easier. Yes, I have a big fear that this moment is going to pass. It's already passing us. We're already forgetting, everything we did last year. We probably are maybe further back in some respects, but that has been my big concern. And that's why I've basically burnt myself way out the past 2 years, because I'm trying to just say yes to everything, which is, I don't recommend, don't do that. Say no to things, please. But I'm just like, I need to get everything I can, because who knows if this is going to be here next year. But I was talking to a friend of mine, Jessica, and she experienced something similar to this maybe 10 years ago, when people discovered that women are good at things too. But she was just like, yes, say yes to things, but know that the work that you are doing now is going to put your foot in a lot of doors, your name in a lot of Rolodexes. And that's ultimately what, don't burn yourself out, but, say yes to things, and know that things will continue, projects will continue to come, because while that big visibility is gone, your name is in a lot more rooms and a lot more spaces than it was before. And so I still am fearful that the work's gonna go away at this level, but I'm hopeful that more people know who I am now, and know that if they need that type of stuff, then that's what I'm here for. The first question.
How's your
workflow?
process?
I think so. One not great thing that has shifted is my anxiety level has gone through the roof now, because before I was talking to like little coffee shops in some rural communities about projects, and that's a very low pressure situation. And now I'm talking to, people at Target, Netflix, and all these, big companies. I don't know how to have those conversations super well, and that has given me a lot of anxiety. But I am fortunate to have been connected to an agent. A friend of mine just kept ragging on me to use an agent. And I was like, why would I hire someone to do things that I already do and, get paid, take some of my money to do it. But I was getting so anxious that I was like, you're right, I need to do something about it. So I fortunately have an agent who handles a lot of that stuff that gave me a lot of anxiety. So it really just allows me to do the work. And, that's the best part of the project, is to do the work and get into it and not have to worry about contracts and, sending invoices and asking for appropriate amounts of money. And that's the other thing, is my agent, because he's having those conversations and because he's been doing it a long time, knows how much money to ask for, and knows that he will likely get what he asks for. And that's something I would have never been empowered to do, just because I haven't been in these situations before. And
How do you find your agent?
I was connected through another artist friend who had worked with him in the past, and I feel very lucky to. I mean, honestly, between George Floyd's death and getting connected with this agent, like, it has turned my freelance career on its head for all the good things. So those are the biggest workflow changes. Other than that, I'm still just doing really terrible, shitty processes to make really grungy looking letters.
Hi, I wanted to make two observations that may play a role.
Sure.
One is, I'm old enough to have remembered when both Kennedys and Dr. King were killed, and to watch the history of racial relations in the country, and how advertising played one of the biggest roles in that. And not, maybe I shouldn't say advertising, but television in general.
Yeah.
But largely advertising. If you go back to I Spy, now Bill Cosby's recent history notwithstanding, there was never ever mentioned that here's a black guy playing on equal footing with a white guy in that show. It was never said out loud. They just did it. And America accepted it. A large part of America accepted it. And now you look at advertising today, you'll have two men as a couple with a child, or two women with a couple with a child. There's a large part of the population who reject that, but they're in a minority, and that minority continues to shrink. And you're on the vanguard of that very movement. Now, I've been in advertising for 40 years, so I really drill down on this stuff. I watch TV commercials harder than I watch TV.
Sure.
So that's been my observation through the years, and you are part of that. And I guess what I'm saying is right on. I'll also add that everything is cyclical. 40 years in this business now. 30 years ago, I shot over 400 toy commercials. I haven't shot a toy commercial in 20 years. So everything is cyclical, and you may find this changes, but as it changes for you, I'm willing to bet, and this is my hope, that the racial component dissolves. You're there because you got chops. And at the end of the day, ad people don't give up unless you have chops.
Yeah.
And then that's the deal. And then everything else gets figured out, like they decide they like it or not, all that stuff. But I congratulate you on being on the vanguard, but be prepared for the cyclical aspect of it, because I'm here to tell you, man, everything changes, man, does it change.
Yeah. I mean, I would love for that to be the case. I think
I feel like it will.
yeah. I'm hopeful for it, but we shall see. I feel like I just am not as hopeful that my race will never, like, it will completely dissolve away, but yeah, I'm hopeful that it will become less and less of the thing, and I'm just hired because I'm the right person for the job.
So you mentioned, I guess, like the dichotomy between before and after,
Mhm.
and you work with smaller clients and then the bigger clients and that was, what is your experience been with both those clients? Will one appreciate you more, or who you are?
I think in general, I don't think the larger companies care about me as a person for the most part, but a lot of times they tend to be easier to work with. They are clearer with what they need. And when they get it, that's it. They cut the check and we keep it moving. Whereas some of the smaller gigs, because it feels more like a relationship, want to be more involved in the process and don't necessarily have those clear deliverables and things in mind from the get-go. There's like more of an education with some of the smaller clients that it can be a little bit more exhausting, but they care about me as a person. So that, you know, there are those trade-offs. And I can't say that that's the case for every small company or every big company. There are people at the big companies who, you know, care about me and want to continue to work with me and have great relationships with. And then there are small companies who are super chill to work with and don't care about me as a person at the same time. So I think there's, in my mind, there's still a place for both of those. I don't want to say that I'm not going to work with the small companies anymore because the money is not there or whatever. I think it's just a balance of can I have, you know, these certain relationships and these certain relationships, you know, coexist, I guess.
So I'm really curious, because I experienced this in my creative career of like, you have these dreams of the clients you've always wanted to work with, and they can come to you, and obviously in a really difficult way, because it's unexpected. But how has the experience aligned with your expectations of your career? And how does that shift what you want?
I feel like when I was like really some of these big clients who I say I've always wanted to work with, I didn't think it was even remotely a possibility that I could have worked with them until probably last year. And so these are very like short dreams that I'm coming up with and really not even realizing I've had the dreams until it's happened. It's been like, oh, wow. And I guess that doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I feel like I have reached these goals and now I don't really know what's next. And I'm not trying to like sound like I'm tooting my own horn by saying I, you know, completed all my dreams, but I just don't think I knew how to dream big because I didn't even think that these moments were even close to being an opportunity available to me. And so that is something I'm figuring out this year, or will be figuring out that in this next year, is what do my next 10 years look like? What can they look like? And then I have to like even dream bigger because I know that now I am capable of, you know, reaching those goals when I didn't think that that was something I could do before. I don't know if that really answered it, but
Yeah, that was incredible.
And a question in the back.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like people don't necessarily think about who they are when they're building their business models or even their brains, and then it kind of turns into this like rolling of like falsities
Yeah.
coming at you, and it's just like that. So I guess that's kind of my question, right? So in terms of your business model, how you are kind of doing that, what does the vetting process look like? Has it actually shifted yet? Or is this something just like taking in?
It definitely feels like I'm drinking from the fire hose right now. I'm just like trying to get through it and take it in. But I have been, you know, having conversations with my agent about, or he's asked me, you know, what are the 5 top people you would love to work with? And I was, you know, I've been talking to other people about this, like that was not even something I had been able to consider before, and have had the moment, you know, had a moment to think about. But I think having that conversation with him and kind of setting my sights on something.
Who are they?
Well, I previous to last month, I had said like maybe Target or Netflix. And then of course, the next week I got projects with them. So I have to reestablish. Yeah. So I was just like I didn't really know. I was just like, these are things I can think of in the moment that seem big. But I think setting intentions around what I could possibly want to work on with him helps us both know what to look out for, how to market myself. I don't really market myself. That's something I need to think about is, what does my brand actually look like outside of just like the work I like to post for fun? I think this is probably the first year I'll need to think kind of more strategically about how I'm presenting myself, because I have been, you know, relying on Instagram to show myself, and that's not, that is becoming more and more apparent that that's not a tool that I'm going to be able to rely on forever. So thinking about how do I market myself this year? So
maybe it's a shift away from like, what are the names of the companies that
mhm,
big, small, it's like, these are my parameters. This is the basically,
mhm,
this is the big impact. This is
Yep.
the basic goal, this is the big impact.
yep.
This is like interesting.
Yeah, and that I think helps too in deciphering what companies are hiring me for
Exactly.
being the Black person, or what companies are hiring me to get the job done well and to be the right person. Yep, go for it.
I'm basically
Yeah. Yeah, so I forgot to mention this earlier, but I have a day job too. I work for a small agency that's based out of Chicago as a designer, and so this freelance stuff it's my what I do at night basically, or when I have free time, and so that kind of changes the types of jobs I can take. So I can't take big retainer types of things or big contract roles or anything like that.
Yes, you can.
I can, but I think for my mental health, I have learned that I basically just want to letter something and hand it off to the client, and then that be it, not necessarily create, big brand projects or anything like that. Kind of just easy, clear deliverables and keep it moving, because at the end of the day, this is the thing. This is supposed to be the thing that I enjoy. I am lucky to have the stability of a 9-to-5 job that gives me benefits and things that make it easier for me to be choosy with my freelance projects. So those projects are like, if it's apparel stuff or murals, anything that's just me drawing some letters and then that, calling it quits is kind of what I've been telling my agent I would like to keep my eye out for. Yeah. So.
in the back there.
So you've been talking a lot about like the diversity hire and like when you should, on your working merit, and I just the practice together is a conversation between a white woman and a black woman about this. The black woman says she has to join a board of a really big company because they had just created this diversity and inclusion committee and they wanted her to be on the board. And she said, no, she said, if you have to have this committee, then it's not actually, you're not actually trying to be inclusive, you're like filling a quota. And I don't want to be that quota for you. And she said that when the CEO or whoever called her back to have this honest conversation with her, he's like, wow, I hadn't thought about it. And it's like actually to not have a diversity inclusion committee. And so I'm curious like what your thoughts are on that, because I think I hadn't thought about it. I was like, wow, that's so true. Diversity inclusion committees are kind of bullshit because you're just looking at it from the perspective of filling a quota. What if we were actually in hiring, not only looking at the work, but taking into consideration that you as a black woman have a unique perspective that someone else doesn't have, and if you don't have that perspective in your company, that should take priority along with the work, or as a fat person, or as a disabled person, or whatever non-cis white thing we can bring up, right? And so I'm just curious your thoughts around that, or like if you would ever turn something down if they were like, you're our, we did this committee, now we want you, like. You talked a lot about that, so I'm just curious more what you think about that. How we can shift. How we can shift from saying, like you said, we're trickling down. Everybody started committees last year. And ain't nothing really happening from that.
Right.
How can we make that shift to it being a fluid part of hiring and that sort of thing?
Yeah. Well, at my 9-to-5 job, I was not asked, but they created essentially a diversity, equity, and inclusion style committee. And they didn't ask me to lead it, but it was something where it was, I think, somewhat clear that I was probably going to be the person to do it because the agency itself is not wildly diverse like a majority of agencies. I think to me, had I not understood their intentions to be authentic, it would have not been something I'd be gung-ho about being involved in. But I think there were actions and moves in other places before I started that job, before George Floyd happened, that I knew that their hearts are in the right place, and it's not something that has slowed down, which has been nice to see. Their actions have not, it wasn't just the 6 months last year when we were all paying attention to things. And I'm not sure. I think that people saying no to those jobs is totally a thing. Like, that's respectable. And I am unsure how I feel about those committees not existing. I think that there is a place for those types of groups and companies. I think like any committee in a company, though, you have to just be careful, because ultimately it's going to serve the interests of the leaders, and the leaders' interests are not always pure. So I think it's definitely a delicate, dance. And I don't necessarily have the answer on how do we do it intentionally, but I think it's just don't be a shitty person, and make sure your heart's in the right place, and make sure you're actually doing what you say you're going to do, having conversations with the people it affects. I don't know, you might have better answers to this. I just feel like
I was actually
you
gonna
just have to
ask a
be.
question.
Oh, I guess you can. What, you haven't asked the question in like 10 minutes. You
But
want to
the
ask the
questions
question?
have always been so good. So
Yeah,
I've
I
just
know, I
kind of
know.
Been laying low. Have you ever had a job and once it was finished, you kind of look back and said, "Oh, I might not have wanted to work with a company based on what I'm learning about them now"?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think.
How did that work for you?
I mean, the last company I was with, it was not diverse at all. I was the only, on a floor of 150 people, I was the only Black person majority of the time. There are not women in leadership, let alone Black people, or any LGBTQ plus representation anywhere. It was not like a space made comfortable for any sort of diversity. But I just was telling myself, well, it's a startup and it's fun, and they're figuring things out, and they'll get there eventually. And my team is, a great team to work with, and so that's good enough. And then I was there for a long enough period of time where my peers were all being promoted. There were other people making more money than me. And it was becoming more and more evident that that was what it was going to be. The change that was supposed, or that should have happened, was not happening. There was a lot of really great change, the company gets bigger, the benefits get better, stuff like that. On paper, it's looking good. But I was slowly seeing that it was not going to be changing for me. And I don't think because you're in it, it's hard to take a step back and look at what's actually happening.
Yeah, how would you even find, to answer kind of the feedback on her question? To me, when I heard her ask questions, I'm thinking of working with companies and finding people that have a track record of things that you can track, oh, this is kind of the Zach statement as well. This is who they've given back to. This is what they've done even before George Floyd. This is, how do you even decipher that? Where do you go to look for those sorts of things?
I mean, I think the problem is that you can, in theory, you can find those things on a Glassdoor or something where, companies are reviewed, but those things are rarely honest. I worked with Zach at my last job, and that job, they were getting tons of awards for diversity. They were like, this is the most inclusive place to work. But the diversity that they were talking about were all the people in the retail positions, the production positions. There were no people in the corporate positions of color. So they were getting all this, if your whole production facility is Black, but your whole corporate office is white, that's not diverse.
Right.
And so it's hard to decipher, what a company is actually when they're shouting about we've got diversity, but it's where's your diversity?
Everybody's gotten so much better at bullshit.
Yeah.
It's harder
Yeah.
to stand up.
Yeah, they know what little things that they can pick out to look good, but it's hard to decipher until you're there. And then, it's, obviously
Mhm.
too late at the
Yeah.
point. Got a
Yeah.
few
to the
questions.
green? Yep.
I'm part of multiple organizations. This is like food where it's like I need to look at it or maybe like
Mhm. Right.
and I don't know what that like what is going on there? Why is it not more integrated?
Mhm.
Every time and it's it's we're on Instagram, we're on the internet, like it's very like it was a democratic, I think it was
Sure.
platform
Mhm.
where anybody can access it. But we need to be hitting and in order to the ministries that I've heard, we're hitting like people who look like us.
Right.
And it's really hard for me personally to break out of that when like
Mhm.
I'm already established within a first life.
Right.
So like I don't know how we progress that way. I do want the progress to be more of the community as a whole and not just for myself.
Mhm. Mhm.
So to think about that on how to do that.
Yeah.
It is together, like, together. There, I can say, oh, I did it, right? We did it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's a specific company that has, done everything right, but I know, at least speaking for myself, for me to go to a space or enter into a community, like I need to see other people who look like me, obviously. So like even Nashville Design Week, that was not something that felt like a super comfortable or welcoming place to go to until I saw, my friend Manny was, running a couple things, or, there are other people who look like me who are going to the events. And then when I'm at those events, do these feel like welcoming and safe places for me to be in, and not just like, and I can't speak for everybody. I'm an introvert. I'm kind of quiet. I'm not super outgoing. And so if I go to this space and it feels like I can, dip into a corner and that's where I'm going to stay the whole time because I'm not being engaged, or it doesn't feel safe for me to engage in a place, then I'm not going to continue to participate in that community. So I think,
If I may interject something really
Yeah.
fast, I think, and I've said this to Cymone, I've said this in other conversations, I think it's easy to build a house and tell people to come. I think when you start to do the work of diversity, it's hard. It's labor intensive, it's a lot of work. And so when I build this house, and I could have the best intentions of building this house, it's 30,000 square feet, 25 rooms. I just want to fill it with people that I love and know, and people that I don't know. But if the people that I invite don't have a car, that's a barrier. The people that might have a car, but they have never been to the side of the town, that's a different barrier. They have a car, they've been to the side of town, but never been in a house like this. That's another barrier. They have those three things, and they don't have anyone that looks like them at that house, so they're not going to come. So there's so many barriers that you really just don't know about. So I think in my experience, what has been helpful is someone coming, hey, Lindsay, I want you to come to this event with me. We're going to the Nashville Design Week opening party. We're gonna have a good time. I don't like going to the events by myself. Can we sit together? And so at that point, I have an ally at that event that may or may not look like me, but they're invited and they're here. So then that next time when Cymone comes in and sees me, she's like,
Yep.
oh,
Yep.
there are other people here that look like me. So I think one thing that can be done baseline is really just stepping out and grabbing someone and just say, I want you to come with me, or a couple people that don't look like you potentially, so I think baseline, I think that could definitely help.
Well, and once you do engage with, someone who doesn't look like you, it can be kind of annoying to always be having these conversations with people, but to ask them, if they feel comfortable in this space, because it's like, I don't have the experiences that you have, and you don't have the experiences that I have. And it's hard to step outside of yourself and, try to understand all of those barriers that maybe you would never ever think about being an issue. And so I think, remaining in conversation and, earnest and, authentic conversation, not just like I need to, do my Black person survey this week, or, person of, a diverse person, I don't know, like truly engage with people and continue to be, in conversation with folks.
She had a question already.
Oh, yes.
You said the last time we're doing was getting a couple of numbers for being diverse.
Mhm,
Do you think it's a little formative?
mhm.
Do you feel that that's a worthwhile, I guess, endeavor to for a company to kind of get an award for being diverse?
On the diversity note, I don't feel like it feels performative every time. I don't think I've seen an award for most diverse company and been like, that's great. I trust these people.
Trust these people.
Yeah, I feel like anytime I see that, I'm like, oh, okay, so what's really the story going on here? I'm, obviously get awards for being great at design and, great at what you do, whatever. But I think those tend to be performative, and I don't think, I don't know what else you should do to tell people that you're diverse other than showing, just be diverse, and show people that you are diverse in, all parts of your company. I think that I know like Nisolo dropped an email where they were telling us their stats in all parts of their company. Like that, list your stats in your company. That feels more true and honest than saying we're the most diverse place in Nashville to work. Like, no, you're not. No, you're not.
Yeah, we're getting low on time. We're gonna take your
Mm.
question, and then we're gonna do this question here, and then, you said what?
Yeah, you said you were.
Oh, no, I'm fine, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Because we have the beauty of social media, right? And we used to have to rely on other people to tell our stories over and over again. And I think the places that I trust the most are the places that show their diversity in a way that's not screaming
Mhm.
diversity. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't need to, this is a black guy, but it's a gay person writing an article.
Mhm.
Like, I just see their face and see them at the events and, see them in action.
Yeah.
And then I kind of trust that more because it's not like, here's our thing,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
it feels.
Yeah.
So, I think that anyone's thinking about diversity and how do we show people that we have it, we literally just use your platforms.
Mhm.
You have it.
Mhm.
And then also engage your employees to utilize their personal brands as well. To do that, if they're comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
You talked a lot about burnout and, your day job as well as your freelance experience. That's true of a lot of designers and creative folks in general. We've always got that hunger and scarcity about things like freelance. I'm like, oh my God, when's the next job going to come? That's a really difficult thing to balance. And I'm just wondering how you keep yourself creatively fed and inspired, because it's a hard thing to do. And you're doing things for work, and then you're doing things for freelance work, and then you're like, oh, but I'm also designing for Instagram, which is a whole another flavor and thing to be worried about. So I was just wondering how you're keeping yourself safe and creative and inspired.
Well, therapy for one. I feel like I try my best to maintain super solid boundaries around each parts of my work. So at my 9-to-5 job, when I interviewed with them, I said, I will be working from 9 to 5 and you're not getting really any more than that. And I made it clear that I am going to continue to freelance, just so it's not like me sneaking around well, I am sneaking around right now. I should be online at my job, but it's fine. But super clear boundaries there. And then even with my freelance stuff, I say I work at night, but it's really like, I'm not right now. Right now I'm very busy and I'm breaking my boundaries, but it's like you get, 2 hours after work to work on freelance, and then you can have 4 hours on the weekends. And then that's it. And then I make sure that I get sleep, and I make sure that I am being social, which is hard for me to kind of maintain. And I just, make sure that the things stay in the box. And then obviously there are times when that doesn't work out, but then my body will tell me. Like yesterday, I woke up and it was not happening. And, you know, I was like, I need to take a day and kind of recenter and make sure that I get my boundaries back in their right spots. So it's definitely a roller coaster that I'm still trying to figure out. And I have no hobbies. So if you have a hobby that you would like to introduce me to, I would love to do something that's not design, that is maybe still creative in a way. So I think that tends to be the way. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah.